What's going on, YouTube? This is Mirage, and I'm coming at you with another video. This one is going to be looking at a few different motifs, but I believe they all connect. Actually, I had to write down some notes here because I was trying to just do it off the cuff like I normally do, and I was getting lost in the sauce of some of my conclusions. So I have some notes here that I'm going to be referring back to. But yeah, let's hop into it. What is this video about? Well, if we look at Unreal, the track 9 off of Glue, we see Blade kind of introduce this motif of him being unreal. And if we look at the previous lyrics of the song where he says, "High like Fuji," what's he saying? Well, I believe he's saying that consuming substances alters his perception of reality, right? And in a sense, this makes him unreal. And if we go into false, he says, "I believe I used to be real," So this is kind of the conclusion that I'm going to be getting at, but in short, I believe that he's saying that his substance use is causing him to become inauthentic. Like, it definitely causes his perception of reality to not be sober, not be real in that sense. So by engaging in this lifestyle, he becomes unreal, and so that's my thesis, right? And I'm gonna get more into it, but I do think it's interesting how in the song Unreal, at the very end, he says, "I'm in the club and I'm gone, but I'm focused." And what does he say in false? He says, "In the club going hard and I'm staring at the wall." So Blade talks about the club in a decent amount of his songs, but not like every single one. So I do think it's interesting that in both of these songs where he's talking about I'm unreal and how he says, "I believe I used to be real," he's also talking about how he's in the club going hard, and he's gone, like he's engaging in these substances, right? In Puppet Master, we see he adds another layer, and it says, "I wanted to be real." And the song is called Puppet Master, so it's invoking imagery of something that's not real, being a puppet, right? Think of Pinocchio. Pinocchio saying, "I want to be a real boy," right? And it's interesting because he says, "I'm the winner, but I feel like a victim," maybe a victim to his own substance use, right? I wanted to be real. I wanted to, engage with life in an authentic way, but instead I have to, use these substances to alter my perception of reality, right? And make myself unreal. And we see this a lot in Plastic Boy. And this is where my interpretation, starts to connect from unreal, real, like something that's unreal being plastic. And that's what Blade is saying here, right? The epitome of something that is unreal or not real is plastic, because it's not made from a natural resource. It's something that's made in a laboratory, right? So in Plastic Boy, he says, "Smoking on an asteroid," so again, talking about substance use, "I'm inside a plastic void. I turn into a plastic boy," So, he's escaping the realness of reality by embracing these substances, and it's turning into his perception into something that's not sober or authentic, right? And thereby fake. So he continues upon this motif, but he starts to, what he does is he never fully separates the substance use from it, but he starts to mention it, and you're like, no, like that doesn't connect. But you can see he's been planting the seeds of this idea and just growing upon it, right? And that's why he says, I'm just trying to touch the real, but it's plastic fake, you know? So he's trying to engage with reality in an authentic way, but he can't because his brain is consumed by the highs of the substances. That's why in False he says, think I depleted all my serotonin, took a lot of E, right? But in Waster, and that's what this song is from, sorry, he also says plastic face tragic on the way, and this ties right into plastic surgery, you know? How somehow, you know, altering his face, you know, is what he has to do. Like, he has to engage with an inauthentic image of himself, you know, in order to be truly happy. You know, what does that image look like? What are the behaviors of this person that Blade wants to be, you know? And it seems like it's a person who is trying really hard to be real and authentic, but he has all these barriers in the way, you know, and he has all these things that are not allowing you to see him for who he truly is, right? And yeah, in Waster, that's really kind of what he's saying. Plastic face tragic on the way. Like, this is something that's tragic for him, that he has to kind of like live out this lifestyle, right? This lifestyle of substances, this lifestyle of keeping up appearances, you know? And the realization, like, silicone world, it's all fake. That's what he says off Red Light Moments, on Working on Dying. It's all fake, right? His entire perception of reality is fake because, you know, he is overdosing, right? And going comatose. So here we can see that Blade is connecting his motifs of real and unreal, and plastic being something that's not real. So that's kind of the main point I want to drive home. And interestingly enough, you know, when he says silicone world, it's all fake, well, what is the most used material in plastic surgeries? It's silicone. So, but circling around back to this motif of real versus unreal, because I think, like, the plastic idea is kind of an expansion upon that, but he does bring it back to real versus unreal. In Vanilla Sky, he says, you and me heal and bleed, free from fear, almost real. Right? So perhaps this was a period of time where he was taking it more easy on substances, and thereby he was becoming more sober, making his perception of reality more real or authentic. So he's saying almost real, like, I'm almost there. You know, I've almost cut out this addiction, or this thing that's been a part of my life that's been putting a filter, like a plastic filter, over his life and changing his perception. What's really interesting is that in Apple, Blade says if it's real then it bleeds. So then if we go to Vanilla Sky, it says heal and bleed. So perhaps this is referring to the process of becoming sober being painful. I'm not saying this is the only interpretation. I'm just saying this could be one of them when it comes to the bleeding. You know, Blade says he bleeds in the club in Into Dust. But I think it makes a lot of sense, because he says if it's real then it bleeds in Apple. Makes a lot of sense when we look at DG Jeans off of Ice Dancer, because he says that's why I stay substance free. I've been eating good. I've been bleeding bad. And then he goes on to say, I felt better about myself when I was feeling bad, which is such a weird thing to say. It's like, how would you feel better about yourself when you're feeling bad? That doesn't even make any sense. But maybe Blade is saying he felt better about himself when he was sober, even though his feelings were bad. Because when you're sober, you don't feel the same way you do when you're baked. And so, he felt better about his overall self and the direction he was going, but his feelings were not where he wanted them to be. They weren't at that high that he wanted them to be. So yeah, that is kind of all I really wanted to say about that topic. I think there's a lot more that could be said. I probably didn't cover everything, but I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more analysis videos. Take it easy.